Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you could take your seats, it is time to get started for the 8th week of Capital Clarity here in the Lincoln Auditorium. As you know, former Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin started this program a couple of years ago to provide a forum for citizens to engage with the legislature and the state government. And one thing I've really enjoyed about being involved in politics in Idaho is how accessible people are. You can just walk into this room and talk to your elected officials and state government employees as if they're regular people, because they are. So this week, we are going to talk about property taxes. Everyone pays property taxes, even if you don't think you do. We just bought a house in November after renting for 4 years here. We paid property taxes as renters because it was just built into the cost of the rent. And now we actually see it in our bill. And when you break down property taxes, they are very complicated. People call up their state legislature and say, can you do something about property taxes? But it's really not the state legislature that levies them. It's counties and school districts and fire districts and mosquito abatement districts and cemetery districts. And each of those have the elected boards that decide how much the tax is going to be based on, certain parameters. And it's, the assessor comes and tells you how much your house is worth to tell you how much is your share of the property taxes. Today, we're going to talk about an issue where certain buildings are exempt from property taxes and whether or not that should be the case. And I'm going to introduce two speakers today. Later, we will hear from Ada County Commissioner Rod Beck about the county perspective and what he sees, the way things should be. But first, I'd like to introduce Representative Josh Tanner. He is my representative from District 14. This is his first year, and he's hit the ground running. He's on JFAC and has his hands in a lot of the budgetary and number stuff. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say about this issue. So, Representative Tanner.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out. Property taxes, I think, are something that everyone that I talk to as I've gone around polling when I was running for this position, and almost everybody had some issue with property taxes. And what I found interesting is, and I'm one of the citizens that have an issue with property taxes. And just to give a little background, I'm also the chairman of the fire district in Eagle, which collects property taxes. For me, one of the biggest things is to start looking. I went in there, and my opinion was to go in there and try to cut as much as we can. For me going in, we ended up removing a fire chief that was for continually taking the 3%. We brought a more conservative-minded fire chief in to try to help level that out. And we've been successful at not taking property taxes, not taking the 3% increase multiple times. Part of the problem with property taxes and the legislator of what I've kind of looked at is there's kind of almost a two different part. The legislators always say, it's not us. We don't get the money. We don't take the money. It's not from us. And you got to go talk to your county, your districts. Like Mr. Ullman said, those are the people that are collecting it. But the legislator does put stipulations on a lot of the property taxes and how it's actually being collected. Part of it was they gave them ability to collect new construction. Wasn't so much an issue at one point in time, but it became a problem because we saw such massive growth happening that they were taking 12% on new construction plus their 3% on top of it. So there were areas that were taking a 15% increase. And as our property values were going up, all of a sudden everything else was jumping at an uncontrollable rate. Then you saw a bill came through a few years back. It was 389 that limited what that new construction down to 5%. I personally would have liked to seen that new construction down even a little bit lower, but that is that would have really helped. But really, what we started to see as well is companies, or I shouldn't say companies, districts and cities and counties went ahead and they took that. They were starting to take the new construction, and then they wouldn't take their 3% for growth. they would roll that over into what they call foregone. And then that foregone is what is scary to me is when we are heading, I mean, our markets are starting to drop down currently, lower and lower. So we're seeing those price values actually come down. But the problem is that they have all this foregone left over. So even in a downward cycled economy, they're going to be taking their 3% plus another 1% in foregone. And this is going to go on until probably the market comes back. So I don't see us actually at a 3% increase year after year of what we set for them. It's really structured in a way now where they're getting more than that. They're at bare minimum. A lot of them are going to take 4%. So that is not what I'm actually up here to speak about, but I wanted to at least touch on that because that has become an issue, and I want more and more people to try to understand how that system works. So this legislation that I'm looking at on regarding hospitals, this came out because so many of the legislators down here kept saying, well, we don't have anything to do with property taxes. It's not our issue. But they've exemplified hospitals from ever having to pay property taxes. Now, a lot of nonprofits do not pay property taxes, but they actually have to go to the counties for those property taxes. They have to turn in every single year. They have to turn in to get accepted to not be able to pay property taxes. And it's up to the county commissioners to decide on that. So what I looked at, and when I found this and I saw that hospitals were exempt, they don't even go to the county commissioners. They're automatically exempt. They have a lot of auxiliary properties. They have vacant lands. They have some of the big hospitals you see out there. And in my opinion, it should not be that. That is now the legislator holding something that they keep going. We're not dealing with property taxes, but they've taken a lot off of the role of property taxes that is not put down into the lower hands, into the county commissioners to make that decision. So I currently have a piece of legislation that would actually do just that. It would take that and allow for every single hospital to actually have to go with every one of their properties to the county commissioners to go determine if they want to take it or not. So if us as the people are telling them we're tired of our property taxes increase, we want it to get spread out to these businesses, then hopefully our county commissioners will listen to us and have a chance to be able to go do that. My bill also kind of pointed more towards where they can make that decision. They could give a partial exemption, a full exemption, or no exemption at all. So for me, I think this would help clean up one aspect of some of the stuff that we're dealing with property taxes. There are multiple other examples I can give you that I'll probably wait and maybe do at another time, but there are some other ones that we have that the legislators exemplified that I think should come back on the rolls to help us deal with it. Either way, I think we are going to start seeing a slowing in property taxes. A lot of people, even when their house value went up, what they actually paid went down. And it is a tough thing. A lot of people don't understand it. They just think as your property taxes go up, your payment goes up, and your actual property tax, your assessed valuation of your building is actually just tied to a levy rate. So they almost work inversely. So as one of them goes up, the other one goes down. As one of them goes down, the other one goes up. So it is a complicated thing, and I wish it was a little bit more simpler. And I think the legislator could actually simplify this out a lot more. And I hopefully in the future we can actually work on some stuff that does this. But for right now, I think this one alone for me on the hospitals is at least progress in the right direction. So thank you guys. I'll stand for any questions as well. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
What about the seniors? We're getting taxed out of our homes that we even paid for something. And we planned it that way so we wouldn't have to pay house payments when we get into the golden year. And to pay for somebody else's kids going to school, I had to pay for my kids going to school, and they were homeschooled. Okay? We still had to pay for it. We still had to pay for schools and the taxes. It's not my responsibility to take care of somebody else's kids and feed them in the morning. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
No. Yeah.
Now, I'm in an area where we're not improved. We're in a rural area, and we wanted it that way. We don't care about curbs. We don't care about street lights. We don't care about the streets even being paved, although they are. But that's what they want to do. That's what they keep asking us. Do you want streetlights? Do you want curbs? Do you want sidewalks? No, give me a bridle trail. You know, you gotta have the same easements for a bridle trail as you would a sidewalk, and then you'd be doing me some good. I could hop on a horse and have some place to go. They don't want us riding on the ditch banks, you know, but they haven't said too much about it yet.
Well, I think you would make an excellent legislator. So
I'm already a precinct committee member.
perfect.
I'm on my way.
There you go.
Okay.
So just to speak to that for just a minute, I did look into this as well, because this is a frustrating thing. So there are other states that actually do. Georgia, I believe, is one of them that once you become 65, you no longer pay for bonds, levies. Problem is our Constitution would have to get amended from what I understand and what I've looked at and researched from at this point. We have to amend that because there's an equalization. So it doesn't matter if you're young, you're old, you're in the middle, you kind of end up paying across the board for everything. It is a frustrating thing. I mean, part of this is that we've seen such unbelievable growth that's happened to our state, and we're kind of in an unbalanced stage, in my opinion. And it is frustrating for somebody that has grown up here their entire life. I don't blame anybody that wants to move here, because I've traveled all over the world, all over the country, and there is no place like this. So I don't blame anybody that for why they came here. I mean, I would want to come here as well, but it has thrown us into kind of a tough spot. And I mean, I grew up in a very small town that didn't have a stoplight, that didn't have anything. I mean, I rode my bike in the parade as a kid. It was a very small town, and now it's a very big town. So it's tough. It's frustrating.
Before we do another question, I have a little jury system so the people on the stream can hear your questions, because people who are watching remotely, they can hear. So yeah, when you do your question,
Thank you, Mr. Ellen.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. My name is Jean Mullenhoff-Moore. I reside in neighboring Beta County, which is Boise County. We are a small population. We are very large. I am the Republican Senate Chair. I'm also precinct 70. I'm trying to find myself going to save our country, my state. In Boise County, my husband and I attend all of the county commissioner meetings, which I would encourage everyone to attend their county commissioner meetings, because you really get a feel of what's happening. Now, on the topic of property taxes, for decades now, Boise County has lost out on revenue, and we are a very poor county, one of the poorest in the state of Idaho. We have bogus basin that is part of our county. You know that they declared they were in 501(c) when they opened up decades ago, and it has remained that way. And it generates a ton of revenue. Everyone from down here skis up at Bogus Basin, and we see nothing in property taxes from them. And different county prosecutors, different county commissioners in Boise County have taken this on for a while, but it's a battle to get that turned around. So it takes somebody with stamina and grit to follow it to the finish line. Maybe I'm that one, I don't know, but we get nothing from Bogus Basin in taxes. That's my statement.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate all you're doing. What's interesting is I actually had a conversation with Bogus Basin this last week about that exact same thing. So I was trying to figure this out on if you are a 50C3, that part of the deal is why they're getting that tax break is because they're considered under educational. And so my question to them was, what are you doing educational wise? And part of what they said is that they're offering a cheaper discount for tickets for kids for schools to come back up. And I said, that's a business decision. That's not, but they are doing a few other things out there. I am going to plan on going up this summer and looking into this a little bit more. and try to figure out if they truly are the ones qualified. I appreciate that.
Real quick,
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm reading, or I think it's reading, where they stopped property taxes at 65 for the amount that goes to the. So if you're 65, you don't have to pay that for amount that goes to the school. And that would be something that our legislature could look into, look for senior citizens at least get a little bit of a break, so they have to pay the public.
No, I agree with you. I've noticed other states been able to do that, and from what I understand right now, at least it's our constitution that we have to change or amend for the state of Idaho to be able to change who we can actually tax and why. So I'm happy to try to keep looking into that one though.
I do like this.
Yeah.
But I'm about that really do you have a map, all percentage of non-profit paying tax for paying tax? I think last time I understood, Ada County had over 30% profit claiming that they were non-profit. And we played KFC, how much millions, something, me, you are. Next thing is, regarding seniors, I saw this in California, that is exempt seniors from paying on schools, et cetera, want to build something. All it is, everybody will pay for it. Anybody under 60. That's not really the best solution. And I'm sorry, guys, I didn't vote for it. Jarvis came out there and the people stay in their house. Goes way back, original price, your house. And it's only 1%. But it goes up, and that's not so bad, but they also add bonds. So if we have a map of all the counties that have, and how much property is not taxed because they claim nonprofit, that would be great. I think it would help everybody.
What? Thank you for your question, and I think this question will be perfect for the next gentleman that's come up because he will be the county commissioner and he will know probably pretty good detail about that. Yeah, one more question.
This actually has to do with hospitals.
Yeah.
If you're taxing them for property, and because of the holdings is not increase what you pay when you go to the doctor. As a senior citizen, I don't think that healthcare here is real friendly. I mean, if, it's, and with the federal and everything. If I go to the hospital, I don't want to be because of property tax. I also believe that nonprofits should pay. So I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah, for me, and I appreciate your question, for me, what I want is a working relationship between the hospitals, their auxiliary properties, their vacant lands, and the county commissioners. So that way everybody's looking at it and making sure that the citizens are getting the best bang for their buck. And we are electing some of these other people to actually look at this stuff, whether it is churches or ski resorts or anything else that is receiving these exemptions, that we're pushing it down to the lower end to make sure, because they're the ones in our communities really dealing with this, and they're seeing what the property taxes are happening, and that's your kind of your direct line to that. So my opinion, just pushing it down to them isn't saying that I'm saying tax hospitals. My opinion is just give the county commissioners the ability to work with the hospitals to make sure that what they're doing is in the best interest of the citizens that they represent.
They don't have that ability now.
They do not. No, they are exempt. Yeah, that's correct. Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you guys so much, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you so much, Representative Tanner. Told me he had to go right at 12:30, so I appreciate the time he gave us here to give you the perspective from the legislature and from somebody who is, like he said, he's the fire commissioner for Eagle Fire District, so he sees it from that perspective. He's a citizen, a voter, and now a state representative. Well, there's one more perspective that we can add to this discussion. As Representative Tanner said, there's two bills here. One of them would give county commissioners the ability to decide if hospitals pay property taxes. And so maybe, one county will decide one way and another county will decide the other way, but it brings that decision down to the local level. And so somebody who is invested in that and who would be part of the decision-making process is Ada County Commissioner Rod Beck. By the way, if you walk out here, you'll see the pictures of the previous senates, senates in the legislature, and look at the faces, see how far back you can find. Governor Little was once the lieutenant governor, and Senator Reish and Senator Crapo were once in our state senate. If you go all the way back into the 1980s, you'll find a certain young man who was in the state senate as well. So.
I thought it was 1946.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Rod Beck.
Well, good afternoon. Josh and I agree 100% on these issues. In fact, we unbeknownst to me, see, I'm the chairman of the Ada County Commission, and it was a wonderment to me when we first started going through all the tax exemptions, because he's right. Every single tax exemption that is available to citizens has to go through the county commission. We have to look at them and see if they actually follow the law, and we don't grant all of them. Every church, every nonprofit organization, if they own property, an educational institution, they're all available for a property tax exemption. The hospitals used to be that way. They used to have to file. They still have to file a form with us, but we have no discretion. They get the exemption. And that's because in 1999, the Ada County Commission, they didn't think they were providing enough community benefit to equal what they were getting in their property taxes exemption. And so the Ada County Commission in 1998 actually denied them their exemption. Well, the hospitals, they're powerful organizations. They have big lobbies, they're multi-billion corporations. And so they hired a lot of lobbyists, just like they're doing right now. They've got about 25 lobbyists working against these bills. And they got produced into law the current statute that gives the county commission no choice whatsoever. If a hospital, a 501c3 hospital, they get an automatic exemption. And the question was raised here, I think right here about well, how about will it increase our rates? If you check around, number one, there are a lot of hospitals in the state of Idaho that are for-profit hospitals that pay property taxes. I'll give you a couple of examples. How many of you have seen the Treasure Valley Hospital here? Okay, you all know. That's a for-profit organization, and they pay property taxes. And their rates are significantly less than St. Luke's or St. Al's. Now, I don't know a lot about the rate structure and why they charge what they charge, but they're nevertheless, for the exact same procedure, you can get a procedure at Treasure Valley or West Valley for a smaller fee than you'll pay at St. Luke's that has or St. Al's that has the big property tax exemption. Well, we thought we should look at this, and because one of the things that they are required to file is a community benefit, and they give us 3 or 4 pages of community benefit, and they have them all lined out. And we didn't necessarily agree with the community benefit, what they had. Some of it was actually a good community benefit, but we didn't necessarily agree with it. And so we decided, well, we'll try and have this discussion in the state legislature. And so we worked and got a bill produced. I had no idea that Representative Tanner was doing the same thing. And we had an Idaho Association of Counties meeting about a little over a month ago. And I ran into him at a reception and he asked me, "Are you going to support my bill?" I go, "Well, I don't know what your bill is." "What is it?" And it turns out we're working on the same bill, or the same idea. Now, ours is a little different than Representative Tanner's. But they both do the same thing, which is give the county commission discretion on the property taxes, property tax exemption. One of the things that our bill does that I like it a little better than Representative Tanner's bill, and I just don't think he thought about it, is we put a clause in there that because this is a statewide statewide bill. It affects every hospital in the whole state that is a nonprofit. And a lot of them are not nonprofit. You need to know that. A lot of them are not nonprofit. There's several of them owned by counties. And this doesn't even affect those properties. But we put a section in our bill that we wanted to make it clear we were not doing this to increase the revenue to the county. We're doing this to make it a level playing field so that any benefit that we get out of it, if we do get a benefit out of it, if we raise some more property taxes from the hospitals, it won't go to any of the taxing districts. It will be spread out and everybody else will pay a little less. Does that sound like a good idea to you? Yeah. So it doesn't we're not trying to grow government, in other words. We're trying to spread out the cost a little more. And we feel, because if you notice, this is 1999 when they got that special exemption. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's a whole bunch of facilities that now have the name St. Luke's on them. Some of them have the name St. Al's, and they're exempt from taxation. Now, some of them are not. For instance, the old MK Plaza down here, the Washington Plaza. St. Luke's has a partner that bought that. Well, part of that property is tax exempt, and part of it is not. The part that they have leased out to another company or another organization, that's not tax exempt. They got a parking garage right over here that is tax exempt, big parking garage. They have office buildings and such, and they bought up some doctors' offices, and sometimes it's really complicated what they do. And we just want to try and unravel that a little bit and do something fair for the citizens of Ada County. And I think our bill will do that. We're not going to even attempt to. In fact, our bill specifically prohibits us from using the additional revenue that might come in to build government in Ada County. It spreads it out and lowers everybody else's taxes. So that in a nutshell is our bill. And I might add, the Idaho Freedom Foundation to give us a +2, right? Yeah, we've got a +2 on our bill. So they like our bill. But anyway, to clarify, every nonprofit hospital in the state will have to submit to the county commission in that county why they should get the tax benefit. And if they can't justify it, the county commission will have the capability to say, well, we don't think you should get 100% tax exemption, but maybe you can get 70%. And I'll give you one good example of how that has worked right here in Ada County. There's a church. See, churches generally are all tax exempt. There was a church that's filed for a tax exemption, and it came up during our discussion, during our investigation, that they were running a for-profit daycare center in a church, which is fine. They can be able to do that. But then you have to ask the question, is a for-profit daycare center, is it fair to give that organization a property tax exemption when all the other daycare centers have to compete and they have to pay property taxes? Well, no, it's not. So we had the assessor calculate the amount of space that they're using in their building, and it was about 20% of the space. And so we gave them an 80% exemption. they still had to pay property taxes on the daycare center. That's the kind of thing we want to be able to do with the hospital properties as well. Look at it, see if it really has a community benefit, if it really fits the statute, and then give some sort of of analysis of how much they should get, if they should get any. So anyway, that's our bill. Hospitals are a tough bunch, and I happen to believe, I don't know how many have heard that, there's a radio commercial about a plumber. He has this tagline: if you need a plumber bad, you need him good. And I think the same thing with hospitals. If you need healthcare bad, you need it good. We don't want to jeopardize healthcare in this community. We want healthcare to be available and to be good and be top notch. But we think that this does not jeopardize healthcare. It puts more of an even playing field, so that some of these nonprofit hospitals will compete the same way that the for-profit ones compete. Anyway, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Beck, for being here. So I think the idea behind the gain momentum, but there's a clear distinction in my mind between a business, if you will, and a church. And I don't think those two should be lumped in. I think those two should be, literally, when you go to a St. Luke's or St. Al's facility, you're going to a business, a provider is going to charge a fee. And I don't think they deserve a tax-free ride because of that. If you don't believe that they're a business instead of a nonprofit, look back to the COVID era. And they were able to tell you could or could not go in their facility without a mask on. Because they're not a private business, they're a service provider. And they have the right to we can't have it both ways. They're either going to be treated like a church, or they should. And I think there should be a clear distinction too. And I think it also should be a statewide policy, not a county by county. What if Ada County got treated different than Boise County? That's not going to do much for property tax relief. Thank you.
Well, I may agree with everything you just said. However, I work under the construct that's in place right now, and we do what we can under the construct that's there. I would agree with you. I mean, St. Luke's particularly, they're a gigantic organization, and they do they have literally over $1 billion in revenue, and they can afford all kinds of. I generally agree with that. But the code says that they are eligible for an exemption, and so. But what it also used to say is that the county commission in that county could quantify it and see, is it a benefit? Because what you have to ask is the tax benefit that they're getting, is that a benefit to the community? That's what we'll be doing. Is it a benefit and if it's a legitimate benefit to the community, then it probably should get the tax exemption for that portion that's a legitimate benefit to the community. Ours is House Bill 109. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be up for discussion in the rev tax tomorrow.
I just had a very brief statement on regarding St. Luke's Hospital, and they recently. We have 52 states in our union. St. Luke.
We have 50.
Anyway.
Well, he says we have 57.
St. Luke's is one of 13 hospitals. 13 in the entire that performs these life-altering procedures on children. One of 13, and that's Idaho should be so ashamed of. And no wonder St. Luke's has all these lobbyists. There are a lot of evil deeds. There are a lot of them there, and I could never visit.
Well, it may be, but and we can. All right. And I would tend to agree with you on that. Maybe that's something we could take into consideration if we get the opportunity to examine their tax exemption status. But we don't have it right now. All they have to do is file a form and they get the exemption. Yes.
The question I have for you, Commissioner Rod Beck.
Is my understanding is that St. Luke's was one of the predominant
if not the premier of the ARPA COVID dollars. So my, I guess, question would be is talking point for the legislators, is that true? And I would suppose despite IACI with St. Luke's being one of the biggest, members of Idaho, is that true that they receive the majority of our tax dollars and federal tax dollars shut down to force the mask and to force the jabs through the MOUs of the member?
I don't know. I don't know how much, where they get all their money. We have looked up there. If you want to look up there, any nonprofit is required to file a tax form. It's called a 990. And that tax form is available to anybody that wants to go on the internet and look it up. We have copies of their 990s, and it doesn't distinguish in the 990 where their actual revenue comes from. It does give us their revenue, but it doesn't give us where that actually comes from. So I couldn't answer that on the because I just don't know how much their revenue came from federal sources. But if you want some good Saturday night reading, get a 990 of one of these organizations, these nonprofit organizations, because they're all required to file it. Every nonprofit, every 501c3, they're required to file a 990, and they're all publicly available. And it gives the salaries and everything of what their organization received. Okay, well, thank you. I'm trying to do the best I can to reduce your property taxes. So let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Beck, Chairman Beck of the Ada County Board of Commissioners. Yeah, how many of you here have ever played the old game SimCity? Nobody? Couple? Yeah, it's a computer game where you build a city and decide what places are zoned residential and industrial and commercial, and you have to keep it balanced. And then you start getting into taxes, and then you start getting into city regulations and laws, and trying to make sure that it builds itself into a nice big city that's self-sufficient and you don't go broke right off the bat. You have to solve natural disasters. If there's crime, you build police stations. You get the idea. You play that for a few minutes and you see how complicated it is to be a city council member or a county commissioner, because real life is 100 times more complicated than that. They've got all these issues they have to balance. You look at hospitals with their property taxes and say, well, they're serving the public. They have certain regulations they have to follow. This is a public good. They have to take people in the emergency room. So give them a break. But then you turn around and see, well, okay, by giving them a break, we've raised the property taxes of everyone else, every other business, every other homeowner. Give them a break, and then they start doing things like the COVID nonsense or whatever else that they might be doing that we disagree with. And at this point, like he said, there's no recourse at the local level. And so I appreciate his bill in that it gives counties and county commissioners who are accountable to the voters in their county that recourse. It's a more local feedback option, which is, I think, a very conservative idea. The best government is the government that is at the lowest level possible. I can't go up and knock on Biden's door or even Senator Reese or Senator Crapo and say, here, I've got this problem with our country. I need you to fix it. But I can go talk to Rod Beck or Josh Tanner and say, look, here's the issue. Can you do something about it? And maybe they can't, but you can have that conversation. And that is what I think is so great about politics here in Idaho. Ever since I've been here, I've been so impressed with the accessibility and transparency of our elected officials. So I appreciate Josh and Rod for coming out and talking to us. You can maybe catch them. Looks like they were both pretty busy, but all our legislators, they're just legislators. They're just walking the halls here. And Rod Beck and his fellow Ada County commissioners, Tom Daly and Ryan Davidson, they're just down the road, a couple blocks at the Ada County Courthouse. So you can go knock on their doors too. So a few housekeeping items before we go. This was a quick one today, but stick around, chat, do some networking. We've got in the back, we have our sign up sheet. If you are not on our email list, sign up. You'll receive emails with links to things like this video, as well as research that our people do at Idaho Freedom Foundation. We're just getting ready to release a pretty explosive article about what exactly is in our school libraries. And you've seen some of the things we've been posting lately. Well, this is 26 pages of evidence of what our children have access to. Meanwhile, also back there is our Radical Gender Toolkit to teach you about what kind of propaganda is facing our children and how to combat it. And if you would like to support our work, there's a couple of envelopes back there. Just drop a check or some cash in there and put it in the mail. I very much appreciate you all for coming out week after week. This has been a lot of fun. We will resume next week with another Capital Clarity. If you have ideas for who you would like to hear or topics you'd like, you can go to capitalclarity.com. There's a form there, or just come talk to me and I'll write it down and see what I can do. So thank you all for coming, and I will see you next week.